Developing Personal and Team Effectiveness 3, or FR1104, is one of the mandatory units in the Digital Applications SCQF Level 6 framework awarded by SQA. To give you an overview of this unit, it's designed for candidates to start to recognise and respect diversity, individual differences and perspectives, and understand how IT can be used to support and enhance both personal and team effectiveness. In all SVQ units, there's always a mandatory unit which involves producing a training and development plan and carrying out some training and development activities. For digital application support SEQF level 6, this is that unit. It's a little bit different, and it also includes aspects of how IT can allow teams to work more effectively. So it's not just about your own development and allowing you to work effectively, it's also allowing the team to work effectively, and also the development activities which is covered by this unit. The criteria is quite specific and that it should be training which is on IT or computer equipment. Digital applications is ultimately about the use of computer equipment, so it's going to be around using various bits of computer applications to manage your time effectively, to perform tasks and to learn. That being said, if you are writing a statement about this or producing evidence towards it, then you can include your regular training and development activities, but to cover this unit you'd also have to ensure that somewhere there are activities on there which you are using technology to learn, and to manage your time effectively and to manage your team's time and performance effectively as well. This unit has 4 learning outcomes. So the first one is understand how IT can support personal development. The second one is use IT to support personal development. 3 is understand how IT can support the development of team effectiveness, and outcome 4 is work as a team member to achieve defined goals and implement agreed plans. Now, you'll notice there that it sort of repeats itself. Outcome 1 and 3 starts off with understand, and that's because these are knowledge-based outcomes, and outcome 2 and 4 is performance-based. So outcome 1 is about having the knowledge and understanding about how IT can support personal development. Outcome 2 is about actually performing that in the workplace. 3 is about understanding how IT can help develop team effectiveness, and outcome 4 is actually using IT to achieve team goals. This unit is at SDQF level 6 and there's 4 credit values. So let's start with the types of learning and development activities. So when you go into the workplace at the start, it's maybe worth mentioning about what is training and development, what is learning and development, how does it relate to your role. So when you start a job, any job, your first day or two will be the sort of typical induction process. Know where the fire exits are, get to meet the team, get your email address, your login, your computer all set up, get used to systems, do a bit of shadowing, learn how to use the particular software that's involved in your role, and complete the particular processes that you have to do. At that stage, you'll typically have a meeting with your manager to outline what it is you know already, what prior skills and experience you have, and what it is you need to learn to be able to perform your role. So you work at what do you know already, what's required for your role, where's your role going, what's the gap, and then you'll perform training and development activities. So when you're writing a statement or producing evidence for this unit, it'd be best to look at it holistically and take it from there. So you'd be want to write a bit of a statement about a time where you've come into the role, you've produced this plan, and the different activities that's been included in it. But we'll start off by going through the different types of activities which you can complete. So the first one is on-the-job training. So on-the-job training, everyone does this. It's used to develop a specific skill set, typically by shadowing, and it's very specific to your organisation, very specific to the processes that you do. So you may know the theory of, if you work at, say you work in accounts, you may know the theory of how to process invoices and double entry bookkeeping, that sort of thing, but you won't know exactly how your organisation processes invoices, because there's different forms, different systems, different steps, different approval processes which is specific to your organisation, and to learn that you've got to shadow and learn how your organisation does it. So that's on the job training. Mostly it's shadowing, sometimes it might be reading guides or doing online modules. You've got workplace training courses, so these can include training related to organisational policies and procedures. So, for example, IT security policy or a health and safety update. So, workplace training courses, this is more so your online training modules. You'll probably have one on IT security, you'll have one on fire processes. Depending on your organisation, you might have ones that's specific for compliance reasons to what you are doing as part of your role, and you might want to mention them if you are doing those. But they are, generally speaking, usually online modules. They may be delivered as part of a small workshop, and it can even be delivered by internal, line managers might deliver it. It's not necessary they have to get people who aren't employed by your organisation to deliver it. Your human resource or personnel department, people team, might also be involved in running some of these courses or programs. You've got college courses. So college courses are used to gain a recognised qualification in a particular subject. It can be delivered as day release, evening course, distance learning or part-time. So difference between anything you're doing on the job and college courses is that college courses will allow you to gain a recognised qualification by an awarding body. So for digital applications, for SVQs in Scotland, it is SQA are the awarding body. Same for a lot of college courses as well, BSQA being the awarding body. Unlike on the job training, you're not going to get a certificate for that, but you will be able to perform your job a lot better, and that's the benefit of it. College courses, usually in subjects, so say you're doing accountancy, very good, very useful. It's not specific, it's different to the on-the-job training because it's not specific processes for your organisation that you're doing, but it's a sort of generic processes, the theory of what it is you need to do. So if you're doing accountancy, you learn the theory, you might use some software, but just because you've got that course, you'll still need to do on-the-job training to learn how your particular organisation does that task. Specialist training courses. So specialist training courses are delivered by a private training provider, typically lasting a couple of days. They can be on a variety of issues. So for example, time management could be on new technology. You've got new technology in your business, you're changing accountancy software, you've got a new CRM system, and you need to be trained up on how to use that. Or it could be team building sessions. If you do a team building session, teams work more effectively, and that can have a higher output, more productivity, and that adds value to the business. They can make more profit from that. So those are some examples of specialist training courses. Typically, it's different from a college course, and that college courses normally last 9 months to a year, whereas specialist training courses are very specific. You may get a certificate, not necessarily from a recognised awarding body. It could just be the training company itself that provides you with their certificate. It's more so about the content that you're learning, and it's typically delivered by an external training provider that would come in and deliver those courses, and the trainers usually are professional. Examples of those sorts of courses would be sort of like the Association of Accounting Technicians diplomas, or the Project Management qualification, the PMQ exam, for example. Those would be examples of ones where you get a certificate, but you could do other ones which is just on stepping up to management or team building or on new technology. Independent learning, so this is not to be overlooked. Independent learning is time allocated to engage in independent research or study, and this typically is by reading books or articles to prepare for an exam. So you learning on your own, reading books, looking things up online, watching YouTube videos, that counts as independent learning. So types of learning and development tools. There's a number of tools that you can use to learn things, particularly using IT. So the first one would be an online learning platform such as Canvas or Moodle. There are a number of different ones out there. Google Classroom is an example of one. eTrack is another one. Canvas, Moodle, again, platforms used by a number of training providers, colleges, universities, to provide you with the resources required to complete a course of study. You could also watch online videos, so you've got YouTube, and there's a number of other video sharing sites out there where you could find informational videos. Could be that you're studying for a qualification, or you're trying to learn something, and it might not be part of your course, but it could be helpful to find information you need. If you're struggling with the resources you've been provided, to go and do a bit of research online, to look at a YouTube video, that can really help a lot of the time. You've got communication tools as well, such as WhatsApp. You could have a WhatsApp group with your peers, so if you're on a course, you could have a group chat set up on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. There's a lot of different apps out there that you can use, and you can chat with your peers. They might know the answer to it, they might know that part, and then they might ask you a question that you know that they don't, and that's a way to learn. You've got books and guides, people, so this is by shadowing as well, shadowing the workplace, we mentioned this a little bit already. That is a type of tool that you can use. You've got people, so that's active learning, so learning by watching people and what they're doing. Mind maps, these can be digital or these can be paper based. Flashcards, you write on one side a question, on the other side is answer, and you've got to try and answer it before flipping it over to check the right answer. Once you've got it, you put it into a pile that you know, and you keep going through it till you get them all right. Keep shuffling them each time before you show yourself them. Mock exams as well can also be used. So developing a learning plan. So as I said, when you start your role, you'll have this meeting where you will want to find out what skills and experience you already have, where your job's going, what you need to know, the gap in between, and then you're going to plan out activities so that you can be at that level that you need to be at for your job. Because your role should never be stagnant. It should never be the same. It should always change. You should always be learning. Each year you should be performing at a higher level, and that's a way of progression. So learning and development ties in very closely with career progression, and the more you take advantage of any learning and development that's offered to you, the more likely you are to progress within your role, in whatever form that might take. So I've got here a screenshot of an example personal development plan. Now in your organisation, they should have a personal development plan template that they use, that you'll be using for your role. I understand that some smaller businesses might not have anything as formal as this, in which case it's normally a discussion, and for your evidence this is also fine. So it might not be the case that you actually have a written personal development plan, but you should have had that discussion, that meeting with your manager to discuss what it is you need to learn, how you're going to learn it, because if you've not done that, then you can't perform your job, you just won't know what to do. So obviously must have happened, and it's probably been that it's been a discussion rather than it being something that's written down. So if that's the case, you can still complete evidence for this point, but it's verbal rather than written down. But while we go through it, I'm going to stick to this example personal development plan just to structure what we're discussing here and the sorts of information that would be on a development plan. When you are doing this evidence for this point, you want to be using your workplace personal development plan where possible. So if you do have a written one, you want to use that one. You don't want to use this one, although you will have access to this. So on the slide here is a bit of a guide for you as well, should you need it. So let's start from the top. You always have your information on there. You'll have your name, job title. You'll have your manager's name that's carrying out the review or the appraisal or the development plan. They're all sort of interchangeable. They're very, very similar. There's only slight differences between them. You'll put in your manager's job title. You also have in the review period, so it could be normally the first date will be sort of your start date. Period, it's normally 6 months to a year. It might tie in with a probation review, or it might just run on a 12-month basis. First section here is a bit of self-reflection for the employee. So you'd put in the training activities you've been assigned previously. You'd give yourself a grade. You'd put some comment on how you performed. You'd complete this before you went to this review, and then during the review, the manager would give you a grade on what they think that you've achieved, and they'd also put on some comments as well there. So that's a bit of reflection. First of all, a good learning development plan would reflect on anything you have learned previously. This is the first one. That section probably wouldn't be completed. There's also a few boxes here, so you might put in this information. Again, this is just a sort of template to give you an idea. Some will have this sort of boxes for this sort of information, others will ask for different information, others just won't have it at all. Depends what your organisation is using. So it's saying here, other areas you have training activities, improvement or development not already mentioned. So anything you've not had space in the box above, you can put in there. There's a box here for what training and development activities have you undertaken in the last 12 months and how they have impacted on your performance. So that is some reflection on, you're not just doing these training activities for the fun of it or as a tick box exercise. You're doing those training activities to gain something from it. So that's where you'd sort of reflect on, what have I gained, what have I learned from conducting that training activity. The next box is about how could you improve your performance? What are the main development areas or training courses that could aid your performance in the next 12 months? So that's a bit of what do you think that would be useful for your training and development. Sometimes it's about going on a course, other times it's about shadowing a different team, but it's where you feel like you could and what you could do to improve your performance. Next box is please indicate your views on career development. So where do you see your role going? And there's a sort of box there just for any comments you like. So if there's something that you would want to put in there, you could put that in there as well. The next bit is goal setting. So you want to write in this box your short-term goals, your medium-term goals, your long-term goals. So your short-term goals would be in the next 6 months, for example. There's no set time, but just be, sort of the next 6 months. That'd be roughly what would be your short-term goals. Medium-term goals would be a year to 2 years. Long-term goals probably 5 years plus. So you want to put in your goals where you want to go, because if you don't have goals, how do you know what you're working towards? There's no point just doing mindless training activities. It's got to be focused, it's got to be relevant to your job, it's got to be relevant to the goals and what you want to achieve. So the first thing you need to do is work out what your goals are. Okay? And you can list them. There's a section on this template to list those. This next section is about your manager's performance review. So that's when they're commenting on your self-appraisal. They're putting in information about how well you performed, what you can maybe improve on. They're then assessing your job role and saying what your current role requirements are, what your future role requirements are, and that's a way of planning out, what activities you need to do in the future. You're not just doing pointless activities. You're not just doing random activities for the sake of doing it. You're planning out, right, this is where the job's going to go. This is what I know already. So what activities will get me from where I am now to where I need to be in 6 to 12 months. And then goal setting is then listing out development activities, and you do that by putting in a date that you've agreed it, the development need, what it is you need to learn, what actions you need to take to develop. Are you going on a course? Are you shadowing people? What is it you're actually going to do to learn? You've got a box there for resources. Any resources, you need to get a book. Do you need to watch online videos? Like, what resources are you going to use? If you're shadowing, it would be the other person's name that you're going to shadow. And the target date, so that's the date that you're going to aim to have that development activity completed by. And the final bit would be monitoring dates. So your plan should always be updated fairly regularly, not necessary to wait till the next review. So when you complete training activities, might be that you've learned on a training session that there's actually further learning and development you've identified, and so maybe you'd put in there you're actually going to go on a further course or a course at a higher level. There's something else during that training you've identified that you need to learn, so you're going to change and adapt your plan, and that's an option there for you to document that. At the bottom is just signatures. So that's the sort of typical contents of a personal development plan. Those are the sorts of things you'd be wanting to discuss and you'll be agreeing on. Looking at it at high level, essentially what you're doing is you're saying, what am I interested in doing? What are my goals? What's my current role now? What's my role going to be like in a year's time? What do I know already? And then from that you can then plan out activities that meets your goals, that will get you where you are now to where you need to be in a year's time to be able to perform your role effectively. And it can be done verbally. Benefits of a learning and development plan. So there's a number of benefits for completing this. So its benefits to you is that you have a better understanding of your job role. So you know more about your job, you know more about where your organisation sees your job going. It might not necessarily be about your job, it could be about your career as well. Where do they see your career going? Businesses grow, they change, they don't often stay the same, and you'll find that if it's growing, then your employer might have an idea of where they see you going. They might see another job opening coming up as the business grows, and they might think that you'd be a perfect to get trained up so that when that opportunity arises that you can be get into that role. Gives you a more comprehensive range of skills and knowledge, so a broader range of skills and knowledge, and the skills and knowledge are to a higher level. You'll have improved competence in your job, you'll be able to complete it to a higher standard. You'll have greater job satisfaction, you'll be happier. Happier workers are more productive. You'll have a structured career plan, you'll know where you're going, you'll be less likely to look elsewhere for career development. If someone's in a job, they've been in a job for a certain period of time, they're used to their job, they feel like they've got nothing else to learn in their current role, and if they don't have a learning development plan, they're going to be looking on job boards to see, well, if I'm not going to progress in this current role, Where else can I go? And I can progress elsewhere. You'll have more efficient cross-team working. So what this means is if you're on a training plan and if you're doing training with members of other teams, it gets you to know and build up personal networks with people that are in different teams, and that will allow more effective and more efficient cross-team working. You can also gain an industry recognised certification. And of course, more money, higher salary because you've been trained to higher standards, you can perform more advanced tasks, therefore, you should be getting more money. There's also benefits to the organisation of placing employees on learning and development plans and getting them set up with learning and development activities. So we'll have increased profit and growth. All this stuff on the left hand side there, all about increasing productivity. Increasing productivity results in more profit, more money coming in, and business growth. So it helps the business and their financial bottom line. It allows for a more efficient organisation. You don't have to hire more people to do more work. If you train someone up, they can perform more tasks than they could previously, and they can do it effectively and efficiently. And that can save a business money in the long run. More effective working between teams, as already mentioned, benefits businesses too. Happy, motivated workforce, again, same as before, more motivated, more happier, more effective, more productive. And it increases staff retention because they're not looking elsewhere to see where they can go and progress their career, because they know that they can progress their career within the organisation and they'll stay around for longer. And it will transform the culture of the organisation into a learning organisation. A learning organisation is an organisation that invests heavily in training and development. It's cutting edge, and that can actually be a competitive advantage. A competitive advantage is where it's something that one organisation has that gives it an advantage over another. Something that can sometimes it be technology, it can be something that they've patented other organisations can't use, particular market share, maybe they're the first organisation in that particular sector. Competitive advantage is something that gives it an advantage over any of its competitors. And being a learning organisation is a competitive advantage because it means that they can do more stuff with less staff because they're training them, and they don't have to waste lots of money on rehiring staff, training staff up, people on working their notice, less productive there. They are a learning organisation, and the amount that people can produce because they're highly trained is more, and that's an advantage over other companies that might not be doing that. So how do you use IT to improve your personal development and your personal effectiveness? So for this will depend on your role, your organisation, and what software you use. You want to be thinking about what software you use in your role, which allows you to manage your time effectively and produce more work and, generally speaking, be more efficient. So that will be most of the software which you use. And so for this answer, this statement, producing evidence, you'll be wanting to look at any software which allows you to work more effectively than, say, using a paper-based system, as an extreme example. There are, however, common systems which most people use, and I'll talk a little bit about Outlook for that. There's obviously different technologies out there, so it doesn't have to be Microsoft. You could be using Google Calendar, for example. There's many different softwares out there. I'm just going to stick with Microsoft for the purposes of this example. So Microsoft Outlook has a number of tools and features which can allow you to work more effectively. So you can create diary invites, and you can basically put appointments in your calendar just to block off time, even if it's just appointments for you. If you know you've got work to complete, good idea to put time in your calendar, block off an hour or two, however long you think it's going to be to complete that task. And in that way it can keep you focused, so you'll get a wee reminder, I've got to do this work, you'll not forget about it, and you'll have time set aside to do it. And if someone else asks you, could you do this additional task, you can look at your calendar and say, well actually I've got a lot on in the moment, or you can see actually no, there's not a lot in my calendar now, I can do that task. So that's a way of being more effective, because you're not overwhelming yourself with work and you're completing your work efficiently because you're planning it out. Now, appointments in your calendar can also be turned into diary invites. Diary invites are the same as appointments, but they include someone else in the invite. So you can click invite attendee on Outlook, and as the screenshot shows, you can then type in a email address, and that'll send that appointment to someone else's calendar, and they can choose to accept or decline it. And that's a good way of organising meetings, because you don't have to, if you send an email out just with a date and time, people might forget it, they might not take a note of it. They might just get lost, they might not be available, they might have other appointments I've noted down I've not used, but if everyone's using diary invites, it's very, very clear who's available, who's free. If it's a group of 10 people, so it might not just be one person, you can put loads of people in this. So there's 10 people, it's very easy to track who can and who can't come for attendance. So it's a very effective tool, very easy to use tool. It can also be used for booking rooms as well if your organisation set up that feature. It can be used for booking rooms quite easily as well. So like meeting rooms, sometimes there's rooms off reception. So if you're getting a visitor, you might want to book the visitor's room so you can see that person. Or if there's a meeting room, you want to have a meeting with someone. Same idea. You've also got a task list. So on Outlook, you can create tasks. You'll normally see this as a column on the right hand side. You can create tasks easily, and it's one way of producing a task list. There's other ways to do it digitally as well. There's things such as Microsoft Lists, which you might use, Microsoft To Do. I know Google's got an alternative product as well, which allows you to create to-do lists. You might use something like a spreadsheet tracker. That could also be a way of you managing your time and improving your effectiveness. But anything you're doing to manage your time is going to improve your effectiveness, and that's great for producing evidence for this point. And the last example I'm going to use from Outlook for this point is about following up emails. So you can right click on an email, click follow up. You can put in a wee flag for a certain time frame, so when you're going to complete it, and then that will automatically add that email to your task list. So if you're reading through your emails, you've clicked on it, it's marked on red, you've still got something to do, you can flag it so you know you've got to complete an action on it. And then once you've done it, you'll see if you look further down that wee drop down list there, you've got mark complete, and you can mark it complete, a wee tick appears, and you know that you have completed that task. So that's another thing that you can use technology to increase your effectiveness. You don't have to limit yourself when you're producing evidence for this point to Outlook or to any competitor products to it. You can use examples from spreadsheets, if you use spreadsheets, if you use any other software to manage your time. The same idea can be applied, but how do you increase your effectiveness? How do you produce more work? How do you organise your time using technology? Just for this point, I've used the example of Outlook to give you an idea of what that means, but you want to be producing evidence based on what it is that you're actually doing as part of your role. So digital and collaborative technologies. So what is a digital and a collaborative technology? They are systems or software applications which allow you to work with other people as if you're in the same room as them or in the same office. You might be in different branches, you might be working from home, you might be in a different office. The people you're working with could be freelancers, they don't actually work for your organisation, but it's any technology that allows you to work on the same information, on the same files, on the same system as someone else remotely. There's lots of different systems out there, so I'm going to go and do a little bit of a run through the common ones. So we'll get Microsoft Teams. That is a very, very popular one. It combines video calls, phone calls, you can share screens, you can set up a team, and you can have a shared group of files. Ties into SharePoint as well. Lots of different features on there. There's features for education as well, so you can set up assignments and classes. There's a lot of different things. Instant message and chat function on there too. So Teams is a great example of a tool. OneDrive, a bit simpler than Teams, and it's really just for sharing files easily. And it's files saved on there also backed up as well, so there's copies of them, so you can't lose it. Gmail, email account. You've also got Trello, which is a bit like Teams. Dropbox, similar to OneDrive, you get to save files on there. It's in the cloud, backed up, secure. You need password to entry to get access to the files, but you can easily share them. Cisco Jabber, which is like an instant message and a phone call tool that's used for enterprises. So if you use that software, that's brilliant. Facebook Messenger is also an example. Allows you to instant message people. Slack, similar to Trello and Teams. You get Google Drive, which is similar to OneDrive and Dropbox, but it ties into the Google suite of word processing, presentation, spreadsheet softwares that you can use as well. WhatsApp for Business. So those are examples of collaborative technologies that you can use. So you want to be discussing and taking examples from technology which you use, explaining their impact, explaining how they're effective in working with other people and getting work done effectively. Overcoming obstacles to effective teamwork using IT. So for this point, you want to think about how you communicate and share information with colleagues. What features of the software do you use to communicate, which can help you work as part of a team? Think about those collaborative technologies. Do you use those? Do you have shared folders? Do you have a shared drive? It could potentially be a database system. If you say you work in sales and use a customer relationship management system, that might allow you to work effectively with teams if you're off and you're managing someone else's accounts while they're off, or someone else is managing your accounts while you're off. Could allow you to access certain files, such as invoicing, if you've made a sale, that sort of thing. So database systems that you use could also fit this as well. But think about how you communicate and share information and work as part of a team. Think about issues that you've maybe had in the past for this overcoming obstacles. So what was the issue and how did you overcome it? It's going to be very, very personal to you and your particular employment and what these issues are, but think about the common ones. A lot of the time it's communication issues, being in a different location. You could have issues around version control and the lack of time to meet deadlines. Communication issues could be anything from having issues connecting to Wi-Fi, connecting to 4G, internet being down. You could have issues with the software, issues with logging in, passwords being locked, technical issues with the software itself that needs IT to resolve. Wide number of communication issues that can come up, and that could be interpersonal as well on this technology. If you're doing a video call, maybe something's been communicated the wrong way and interpreted the wrong way. Being in different locations is a barrier to teamwork, and the solution could be to use maybe Teams or Trello or Slack to work together. Version control, you've got a number of different versions of the same document, and you've got to make sure that everyone's working from the most up-to-date version, particularly if you've got a number of people working on the one process or the one document. That can get very confusing, and it can waste a lot of time if people are working on out-of-date versions. Emailing things back and forward isn't a good way to do that if you think about it, because it's very easy to get an old email and not have the most up-to-date one, whereas if it's on Teams, you know it's going to be the most up-to-date one. So the answer to all those issues is typically going to be using collaborative technology. So think about the collaborative technology that you use as part of your role and think about how that allows you to work as a team. Think about the processes that you do. You've got to work with other people. And how does using that technology help you achieve those goals and overcome any obstacles or issues that come up when you're working with other people? The roles and responsibilities of team members. This criteria is a particularly straightforward one. All you really have to do is list all the members of your team, state their job role and describe what their role and responsibilities are. Make sure when you're doing this so it's in the context of your work. If you're doing it as part of a holistic statement, then you'll be wanting to, when you're talking about people, explain what their role is and what their responsibility is. And we've got a wee example there. No bonus points for guessing what show this is referencing, but as a wee example, we've got Frank Reynolds. He's the director responsible for the operations business function. His role is to implement strategic change and ensure we're on target towards the budget. Dennis Reynolds, operations manager, responsible for day-to-day operations, and a little bit about what he does. Mac McDonald, team leader, takes up some management tasks when Dennis is off, responsible for creating reports, keeping track of KPIs for his little sub-team. And D. Reynolds is an administrative assistant responsible for keeping the CRM system up to date, processing requests for information from other teams. So there's a bit of an idea of how you could set that out, but you want to be doing that for your organisation, the people that work within your team. If you work in a small organisation where you don't have many people, you're not really split up into a lot of teams, then you can think of the organisation as a whole as the one team and outline people's roles and responsibilities within that. Okay. Contributing to team activities using IT. So this is about how you can produce, how collaborative technology, how IT and digital software can allow teams to work effectively and efficiently. So for this, you need to think about the processes which you complete in the workplace. Think about a process which you do and there's a number of different people involved in it. There's different stages. How does the software that you use help your team achieve that goal efficiently and effectively? Imagine how difficult it would be to perform that business process if it was paper based and you actually had to take it from an entry, and once you're done with it you put it in someone else's entry. Or you put it in outtree and you've got someone that's employed to just come along and pick up it one entry and put it in another entry. That's how it used to be a number of years ago. But now IT's replacing that. It's saving people time, effort, and energy because it's streamlining these processes. At a click of a button on a system, the other person can then see it on their end and continue the process from there. So some examples of systems and applications which can help with this would be a database system, CRM system, order management process system, finance software, enterprise resource planning software, ERP software, lots of different database systems. Collaborative technology, we've mentioned already. Think about the business processes that you do on these. We'll use a little example here to illustrate this point. You're obviously wanting to reflect on what you're doing as part of your role. But we're going to use this where it's a sort of finance process where a customer makes a purchase to the purchase being put onto the system and recorded as a sale. So we start off step one, the customer makes a purchase. The sales rep then creates an invoice, and they do that on the CRM or customer relationship management system. An accounts assistant can then log into that same system and see that there's an invoice there, and they can then process it. So they can send it to the CRM system. They can connect the information between the two systems, run a report, input into the other one, or it does it automatically. And they can take that invoice, they can process it on the accountancy software. The credit control assistant then chases the late invoice payments, so they can run a report, see what invoices have been paid. This one hasn't, so they can log into that system and chase the late payment from a report that's come out of the accountancy software. And then at the end of the month, the accounts supervisor can create a month-end report, reconcile the payments, make sure everything tallies up, and that can feed into the financial performance for that month and ultimately into the yearly accounts for that business. So you can see there, that is a process where a number of people have to perform a task, and it is part of a team. As much as people might be in slightly different teams, you get sales people and finance people there, they are all working as part of a team to achieve this goal, and the technology that they're using is allowing them to do it effectively and efficiently. And for this, you're wanting to be commenting both on what the process is and how the IT systems or how the software applications can allow you to perform that task effectively. So what impact did your work have? What did it achieve, and how did that help achieve a wider team goal? Keep those in mind when you are producing evidence or writing a statement on this point. Receiving feedback. So when you are working in a business environment, you're going to receive feedback from a number of different places. So you can have informal feedback, and it's best not to overlook this, because I think when people tend to produce evidence for this point, they go straight into the formal stuff. So let's have a look at informal. So that could be just emails, well done, you've done a great job, actually no, you missed out this point. Could be people dropping by your desk saying the very same things. Could be a phone call, can you help me out with this, you did a great job on it last time, or I'd just like to congratulate you on how good the work's been doing, that sort of thing. You've also got formal processes, formal occasions where you'll receive feedback. So this could be written feedback on your performance reviews, appraisals, monthly one-to-ones. One-to-ones is where you would sit down with your manager on a monthly basis. Most organisations that do this will have a template form which they'll fill out, and it goes over your KPIs, what you've done well, things you want to improve on, things you want to discuss that's happened over the month. It's just a formal occasion to get you to chat about your performance with your manager. You've got probation reviews, typically they're 6 months, but it's different from organisation to organisation. Appraisals, and also after training and development activities, you'll always receive feedback on how well you've done on the course by the trainer, usually, on almost all occasions. But you might also receive some feedback from your employer as well on how once you've completed that training, your performance in the workplace should then improve, and you should receive feedback on that as well. Feedback can be both positive and negative, so don't just go straight for the negative feedback when you're thinking about this. Think about positive feedback you've received as well. And any sort of negative feedback, so that stuff you haven't done quite right, should always be put in a positive light in the workplace, and it should be constructive criticism. Okay, you didn't do this quite right, but here's what you can do to improve on it going forward. Just saying someone's not good enough or you've done something wrong and just leaving it at that isn't really helpful. You want to have constructive criticism you should receive, and that is a form of feedback which you can receive, and it will be along the lines of, look, you didn't do that very well, but it's fine, it's the first time you've done it, here's some tips, why don't you go look at what that person's doing around it, and then you can learn from that and you can move on. And you learn from your mistakes that way when you do constructive criticism and you get that feedback. One of the best ways to learn from mistakes is actually to learn from other people's mistakes as well. So if there's other people in the workplace that's made an error, you can actually learn from their mistakes by taking on their learning from their error, reflecting on it, making sure you don't make the same mistake again, or do something differently to avoid that event from happening, that mistake from happening. Providing feedback. So you'll regularly provide feedback to colleagues, particularly if you're on an apprenticeship and you feel like you are still feeling new to the team or new to your role. You still get to provide feedback to other people. So you regularly provide them to colleagues. So you want to be, for this point, this evidence, thinking about a time where you provided that feedback and what that feedback is. So typical forms of feedback you might provide to someone else would be deadlines and deadline and the standard of the work that's been completed for yourself. You might be about managing a process, someone else hasn't done the work quite up to the right standard, or maybe they have done it right but they've put the information in the wrong place. Go back to them and saying, well look, actually this is where the information should go, or this is a slightly better way of completing that task as a form of feedback. That's kind of what I mentioned there, tips and guidance to colleagues. You didn't do it quite right, or you did do it right, but here's an even better way to do it. You are an expert in your business process, so always remember that even if you are fairly junior, it's probably the case that the processes which you perform, you're an expert in, and you might find people who are more senior or more experienced coming to you for advice on particular areas that's relevant to your processes. So always remember that you're an expert in the business process, and you might find that you're providing feedback to people who are more experienced, but it's because they don't necessarily deal with that process that you deal with, and you can provide them with feedback on that. This can also be in a group setting, so team meetings, you provide feedback. A lot of time, team discussions or team meetings can also be an opportunity for you to provide feedback. So for gathering evidence, you want to be thinking about a time where you have provided feedback, and be talking about what feedback you've given, how is it communicated, how was it received, did that person take it on board, would you do it differently if you're providing feedback to someone else, that sort of thing. And assist others to use IT. So this is it doesn't go as far as training people. Assisting others to use IT, you're not going to be expected to train someone up on a process. However, you might, as part of your role, be asked to show someone a particular feature of the software that you do, or how to do a particular part of the processes which you are involved in. You're an expert in your processes within your area of responsibility, so it might even be someone more senior that you're shown how to do this, or more experienced. That's fine, because you're the expert in what it is that you perform. So think about the processes you perform. Have you ever had to show anyone else how to do it to cover annual leave, for example? Has there been someone that's new that's joined and you've shown them how to do anything? They've actually shadowed you if you've been there long enough. You're at that level. It may be necessary for you to show others how to perform these skills, and reasons for that could include annual leave and new staff joining. And this could be on a variety of digital processes or on tools within software applications. So it could be about you training someone up in a digital business process. That's a process which is completed on the computer. Or it could just be about using particular tools on, say, Excel, a software application, or any other applications which you're using. Running a search or running a particular type of report, you might be asked to show someone else how to do that, and that is you assisting others to use IT. Another way that this point could be taken is if someone has asked you for advice or a tip. How do I do this? I'm not really getting this. Can you help me? Tell me about a time where you've done that. Get your evidence on that. A time where someone's asked you, I don't really understand this. Can you help me? And that shows that you're able to help other people, and that leads to effective team working because it builds that cohesive team culture that people are okay to ask for help and they know that you're willing to help provide it, and that has benefits for team working. So hopefully that's helped you out in terms of running over that unit. But that brings us to the last criteria. So thanks a lot for that.